Hey everyone, my name is Trofort Wilson, and here's another photo shoot breakdown. So for this photo shoot, I had the opportunity to have some fun with professional long jumper Will Williams of Team USA. So going into the shoot, I knew that I wanted to have fun and just play with lights. And especially going into the Olympics, you always want to create some images that can help these athletes brand and monetize themselves. So going into the first look, I knew that I wanted to photograph him in his custom uniform that he made for himself. It kind of was like a Wakanda theme where it has this really nice gold trim. So I knew that I wanted to play around with some light, especially using some orangey gold color gel. So for this setup, for my key light, I had a beauty dish with a grid over top of him because I knew that I wanted my lighting to be nice and moody. Next, for my fill, I had the clamshell reflector right underneath him. Now, most times I usually like to have the silver reflector on it, but going with this theme and this look that we were going for, I wanted to have the gold reflector underneath him so that the fill was nice and warm on his skin. Being that the key light was coming from overhead, there was a shadow being created on that one side, so I want to be able to fill that shadow a little bit. So I added a silver reflector on that side just to be able to bounce in a little bit of detail within that shadow. And then on the rim light, I had a medium strip with an orange gel just to be able to create that nice, beautiful gold gel that you see on his face. Now for the background, of course I was shooting on black. I wanted to add an accent with that. So using the optical snoot, I used the gobo that just had that nice strip of light, and I just had it right behind him with the orange gel in it as well, just to be able to complement the gel that was happening on his skin. And here's some examples of the beautiful portraits that were created with that. Now for the next look, I wanted to do something different. Because he is a long jumper that jumps in the sand all the time, I wanted to actually play around with that concept of sand. So I went to the local track, grabbed a bag of sand, and just used that to be able to accent on his skin. So having him shirtless and having him with his nice big chain, I wanted to add some sand on his face and on his skin just to be able to create some nice moody portraits, because I feel like this is something you don't really often see, especially when it comes to long jump athletes. So we utilized the exact same lighting setup from our first set. So all I did differently was switch out the gobo for a different pattern just to be able to change that background look. Now for the next setup, we knew that we wanted to photograph Will in his Team USA kit, and of course when you're in the kit, you have to have that pride, so we decided to add in some red and blue color gels. So for this lighting setup, so for the key light, similar to the first setup, I used a beauty dish with the grid aimed down towards the subject to create some nice moody light. For the fill, we used the clamshell again, but instead of having that gold reflector, I just did silver, just so that it would look more natural. Then on each side of him, I had additional silver reflectors, one on each side, just to be able to create a nice fill on both sides of him. And now for the background, I had a blue gel that was higher up aimed towards the background, and then a red gel that was a little bit lower and aimed towards the background as well. As you guys can see in the vignette for the background, there's more blue than there is red. Now, as you guys can see on the skin, you can see a little bit of the red and blue falling off on his skin, but it's not that drastic. And that's because, one, we had the lights a little bit aimed towards him so that there were some fall offs, but we also used the reflectors that were framed on the side of him to be able to block the fall off so it wasn't hitting so much on his face and overpowering his skin tone. We wanted it to be nice, more, and neutral. Now, after we got these nice, clean images, I want to do something a little bit different by adding in some Mylar paper. As you guys know, Mylar paper is like a aluminum foil that you can use for your backgrounds or for different effects. It's nice and reflective. I had some wrinkled Mylar paper in the studio that I always wanted to play around with, so I thought this would be a great time to create some cool images with it. So utilizing mostly the exact same setup, all we did was add in the Mylar paper as the background, but then we moved our two gel lights. So for this setup, I had the red gel. I decided to put that red gel directly behind him where he was sitting. I was coming to him at an angle, so I had the light right behind him but aimed towards the side of him, knowing that, one, it would create some nice red on the background, but also it would bounce back and create a nice rim light on his face. So for this one, what I did differently, I actually had the blue gel more towards the front of him, where it was actually shooting and bouncing off of the clamshell to create that nice soft blue light that was actually hitting his face. But also where we had it positioned, it was also falling off on the background. So I'm trying to simplify how it. So to try to simplify how it was, we had the reflector clamp here, the reflector here, and the light was hitting but bouncing off the reflector clamp onto the face to create that nice fill. But the actual reflector was bouncing it from hitting the majority of his face, but also falling back to actually hit the background of the Mylar paper to create that blue. I'm not sure if I explained that the best, but here's a lighting diagram, the actual BTS clip to actually see how everything was set up. So moral of the story for this photo shoot, don't be afraid to have fun. Don't be afraid to move lights. Don't be afraid to play with color gels, and have fun just creating. Sometimes, sometimes work starts to, sometimes when your hobby becomes work, it doesn't get as enjoyable. And so the moral of the story is have fun creating, play with lights, have fun, always shoot. So I hope that this photo shoot breakdown was helpful. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments, and be on the lookout for the next video.